My video on Hoxhanism was bad, so this one is an attempt to fix it. Plus, someone told me how to pronounce it, which is nice. If I had to sum it up quickly, I would say Hoxhanism is an orthodox Marxist ideology that supports a Maoist-style revolution, while avoiding revisionism. Hoxhanism is based on the ideas of Marxism, Leninism, and Maoism. I have a video explaining Maoism in more detail, which is not great but not terrible either. Essentially, Maoism is an ideology that tells you how to establish socialism if you live in a poor, not industrialized, colonized nation, like China was 100 years ago. They do this by working with the local capitalists to destroy the foreign rule and foreign capitalists, after which they develop the industry and fight the local capitalists to establish a form of state socialism. This fits Albania perfectly. Before and during the Second World War, Albania was a colony of Italy, with hardly any industry. In steps Enver Hoxha and the Party of Labour of Albania. They were resistance fighters against the foreign fascist oppression. Hoxha must have been popular because he was elected first secretary in 1943, still in the middle of the war. After the war was over, the monarchy was abolished and Hoxha and his party took over the rule of Albania. The party was very much modelled after the Soviet Union under Stalin, which means orthodox Marxist-Leninist in this context, and they believed in a Maoist style of revolution. In 1953, Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, did what all people eventually do and died. He was succeeded by Grigory Malenkov, who didn't do anything notable before being replaced with a corn enthusiast called Nikita Khrushchev. As all new leaders do, Khrushchev made some changes, notably denouncing some of Stalin's actions and policies related to the KGB and stuff. Essentially, he said that Stalin made some mistakes. He even renamed Stalingrad into Volgograd. Naturally, there are some who like Khrushchev and some who don't. And depending on which side you are on, he is correct or revisionist scum. What we know he did was that he purged Stalinists from the party and the rest of the socialist world went along with it. Everyone but Hoxha, who refused to change his mind. He was a convinced orthodox Marxist-Leninist and he would not accept the supposed revisionism of Khrushchev, even if it put him at odds with the entire world. So basically, Hoxhanism is an ideology which states that the Soviet Union under the rule of Stalin was good and that structuring a state different is wrong. And because of the Albanian, aka Third World roots, they don't believe in a Leninist-style revolution but rather a Maoist one. The Cold War had three factions. There is the US and pals, aka NATO, aka the First World. There was the USSR and comrades, which were the Second World. And there were countries which didn't take a side yet, known as the Third World. And now you know where that term comes from. By the way, this means Austria and Switzerland are both Third World nations. In the Third World, some countries eventually took sides, if one economic system won over the other. But there were also those who deliberately stayed neutral, like India and Yugoslavia, known as the non-aligned movement, which is probably the safest way not to be nuked. Just be cool with everyone who has nukes. By being a vocal anti-revisionist, Enver Hoxha managed to antagonize all three factions. He naturally hated the US because capitalism, he hated the USSR for Khrushchev, and he was critical of China for not being socialist in the right way, and for Yugoslavia, Hoxha said that Tito was correct, that revolutionary ideas need to adapt to local conditions, but because of the market economy, he declared that Yugoslavia was an anti-Marxist and a social imperialist. He used the same word to describe China and the USSR. He basically told every single country that they sucked and should be more like what he said they should be like. He hated everyone and criticized anything anyone did, which is why I made a Trotsky joke in the original video, which was not received well at all. Sorry about that. Hoxha condemned Brezhnev's decision to send in the tanks during the Prague Uprising in 1968. He even withdrew from the Warsaw Pact in response. In 1985, Hoxha died and Albania went capitalist 6 years later, which marked the end of Hoxhanism as ruling ideology of a country. But that doesn't mean it's not relevant. A lot of previous Maoists were convinced by Hoxha, especially in Latin America. Look, I made this map of the countries that have a Hoxhanist party. I spent a long time making it, so I'm keeping it on screen longer than it needs to be, and you cannot stop me. As for practical policies, under the Agrarian Reform Law, Hoxha completely reformed the way farming was done. Originally about 100 people owned all the farmland. The Party of Labour redistributed all that. The industry was modelled after the USSR with the typical nationalisation of all industries, monopolising trade under the state and centralised planning and so on. In the 50s, the government operated a quick industrialisation campaign. They also improved healthcare and education, as leftists tend to do. Hoxha was very afraid of a Yugoslavian invasion. Yugoslavia was a large, powerful nation compared to Albania, and they were rivals, so there was a threat of invasion. So they built a fuckload of bunkers. There are a lot of criticisms of this ideology. Naturally, all accusations of authoritarianism, cult of personality, and use of secret police and things like that, which come with a Stalin-inspired ruling party. They are also called hypocrites because they advocate for a Maoist-style revolution while having used the Marxist-Leninist one. Hoxha also outlawed homosexuality, which is big cringe, not gonna lie. He was staggeringly anti-religion. He imprisoned religious officials and closed and destroyed churches in an attempt to force to secularize society, which is questionable at best. In conclusion, Hoxha was a very Marxist-Leninist leader. The ideology is orthodox Marxist-Leninist that uses a Mao-style revolution and criticizes everyone else for being revisionist. Thanks for watching. I'm going away for a few weeks after the next video, so it would be nice if you can donate. And yeah, I will explain why I'm taking another break in the next week's video. Thanks for watching edition 2 of this one.